Kepler Station floated alone in the vast darkness of space, a small human outpost surrounded by nothing but stars and silence. Inside, Commander HFY sat in front of her scanning equipment, watching the numbers on her screen change and shift. She had been working for almost 2 days without proper sleep, and her face showed it. Her eyes felt heavy, and her skin felt puffy from the station's recycled water system that never quite worked right. HFY was a scientist at heart, not someone who cared much about how she looked. She had come to Kepler Station 5 years ago to study the space near the Andromeda Corridor, a region of the galaxy that few people paid attention to. Her work was quiet and simple. She sent out scanning signals into space and studied what came back. Most days, she found nothing interesting. Today would be different. At 2:47 in the morning, station time, her instruments detected something strange. The energy signature did not match anything in her database. It was not from a spaceship. It was not from a star. It was something else entirely, something that seemed to come from very far away, but was somehow reaching this part of space. HFY leaned forward in her chair. She had seen unusual signals before, but never anything like this. The pattern was complex and organized. Whatever had created this signal was powerful and intentional. She quickly began to record everything. She sent data to her backup systems. She even took photographs of the readings, old-fashioned as that seemed. The signal continued to grow stronger for exactly 43 seconds. Then it stopped. HFY sat back in her chair, her tired mind working hard to understand what she had just witnessed. She reached for her cold coffee and made a face at the taste, then decided she needed real sleep before she could make sense of any of this. What HFY did not know was that her station's external sensors had done something unexpected. While she was scanning for the distant signal, the sensors had captured an image of her. Not her ship, not her station, her. A full-body scan had been taken automatically and stored in a backup file that HFY did not even know existed. 3 minutes after HFY's signal stopped, something much more important happened. The Galactic Council's surveillance network, an ancient and powerful system that watched over thousands of star systems, detected the same energy signature that HFY had found. But the Galactic Council's systems were far more sensitive. They not only detected the signal, they captured the backup file with HFY's image. The Galactic Council's computers worked very fast. They analyzed the signal. They studied the image. They came to a conclusion that would change everything. In the ancient language of the Council, their announcement was prepared in seconds. Then the announcement was sent to every major civilization in the known galaxy. The message was simple and terrifying. It said, "Warning! Unknown cosmic threat detected. Species classification unknown. Hazard level Omega. Extreme caution advised. Image attached for identification." The image showed HFY clearly. She was standing in her station's control room wearing an old gray uniform that she had owned for 3 years. Her dark hair was pulled back roughly. Her face was round and puffy from exhaustion and poor water. Her eyes were tired. She looked exactly like what she was, a tired scientist who had been working too hard for too long. But the Galactic Council did not know she was a scientist. The Council only saw the image and the dangerous signal. In their ancient way of thinking, they believed that whatever had made that signal must be extremely dangerous. And since the image had been captured at the same time as the signal, they believed the image was of the source. They believed HFY was the threat. Within minutes, the message had reached the Valorian Empire, the Serpent Collective, the Outer Ring nations, and dozens of other powerful civilizations. Species that had never even heard of humans began to fear this new danger. Military commanders looked at HFY's tired face on their screens and prepared their weapons. Scientists studied her image and debated what kind of creature she might be. Politicians held emergency meetings. HFY, meanwhile, was asleep in her small quarters. She did not know that her face was being watched by trillions of beings across the galaxy. She did not know that ships were being prepared. She did not know that her life had just changed forever. She woke up 3 hours later when her colleague, Dr. Teo, came running into the control room. Teo was younger than HFY, a good scientist with quick hands and a nervous personality. He was shaking. "HFY, wake up! Something is happening," he said loudly. HFY followed him to the control room, still confused and tired. She asked him what was wrong. Teo pointed at the communication screen, which was filling up with messages, hundreds of messages, thousands of messages. They were all coming in at once. Messages from Earth, messages from the Galactic Council, messages from species whose names HFY had never even heard. All of them were saying the same thing. A cosmic threat had been detected. The threat had been identified, and the threat appeared to be near Kepler Station. HFY read through the messages, her tired mind becoming more and more alert. Then she saw the image. Her image. Her face, tired and puffy, displayed across 1,000 screens in 1,000 star systems. She stared at it for a long moment. Then she did something that surprised Teo. She sighed. It was a long, tired sigh. "Don't zoom," she said quietly. "I look puffy." Teo looked at her like she had lost her mind, but HFY was not joking. She was looking at a galaxy-wide emergency broadcast that had just declared her an unknown cosmic threat, and all she could think about was how unflattering the image was. Teo's hands shook as he pointed at another message. 3 armadas were moving through space toward their location, ships from 3 different civilizations, all heading toward Kepler Station, all believing they were coming to defend the galaxy from a terrible danger. "They think you did it," Teo said quietly. "They think you created that signal." HFY turned away from the screen and looked at her colleague. She thought about the signal she had detected. She thought about her station's sensors. She thought about the backup file that must have been created somehow. "I did not create that signal," she said carefully. "And there is something else. Something much bigger is happening out there. Something that my sensors found by accident." She pointed back at the readings, which were still being recorded. The signal had stopped, but the pattern remained. HFY was a scientist, and even in this strange moment her scientific mind was working. "Whatever made that signal," she said, "is not me, and it is not here. It is out there, very far away. And whatever it is, the Galactic Council's systems detected it at exactly the same moment they captured my image." Teo understood what she was saying. There had been a mistake, a terrible, galaxy-changing mistake. But the 3 armadas were already coming, and in a few hours all of them would arrive at Kepler Station. Believing they had found the greatest threat the galaxy had ever known. They would find only a tired scientist and her worried colleague, and one very unflattering photograph that would make HFY wish she had gotten more sleep. The situation at Kepler Station became more serious with each passing hour. The 3 armadas did not slow down or try to communicate. They simply moved through space toward the small human outpost with purpose and speed. The Valorian Empire had sent the First Fleet, a collection of large crystalline ships that caught the light in strange and beautiful ways. The Serpent Collective sent their heavy cargo vessels, massive and slow but very powerful. A third group of ships, from the Outer Ring nations, was following close behind. HFY and Teo sent out messages trying to explain the situation. They sent scientific data showing that the energy signature had not come from the station. They sent explanations about how their sensors had accidentally recorded an image at the same moment they detected the distant signal. They sent everything they could think of that might help the approaching ships understand the truth. Nothing worked. Every message they sent was interpreted in a different way by the different civilizations. When HFY said, "I am just a scientist," the Valorian Empire's translation system converted it into a message that sounded like a declaration of power. When Tayo tried to explain the mechanical mistake, the Serpent Collective's computer saw it as a coded military message full of hidden threats. It was as if the galaxy had already decided what it believed, and no amount of truth would change that belief. The image of HFY's tired face had spread across the galaxy so quickly that billions of beings had already made up their minds. Some believed she was a weapon created by humanity. Others thought she was the true form of some ancient enemy finally returning to attack. A few civilizations even suggested that humans had been secretly planning this assault for centuries. News channels on 1,000 different worlds showed HFY's image over and over again. Scientists examined it, trying to figure out what kind of creature she might be. Some said she was organic. Others insisted she was a robot or a digital being. A few experts claimed that the image must be fake and that the real threat was something far worse hiding behind it. Back on Earth, humanity's leaders were in complete chaos. Some wanted to hide HFY and protect her from the approaching fleets. Others suggested that Earth should surrender immediately to show that humans meant no harm. Military commanders began to prepare defenses around the Earth system, not knowing if they should attack or defend. Scientists held endless meetings trying to understand what had happened. In the middle of all this confusion, a young woman named Mi-jun was sitting in an office at the Diplomatic Corps building on Earth. Mi-jun was a xenolinguist, which meant she was trained to understand the languages and communication styles of alien species. She was brilliant at her job, able to see patterns and meanings that others could not see. Mi-jun was watching the broadcast from Kepler Station when something caught her attention. The three Armada leaders had sent response messages to HFY's attempts at communication. The messages were different from each other, which was interesting. But more interesting was something buried in the technical data of the original signal that HFY had detected. Mi-jun pulled out her analysis tools and began to study the mathematical patterns in the energy signature. She worked through the night, comparing the patterns to everything she knew about different alien species and their technology. By morning, she had reached a conclusion that made her stand up from her desk so quickly that her chair fell backward. The energy signature did not match human technology. It did not match the Valorian Empire's technology or the Serpent Collective's technology. It did not match anything from any of the known civilizations. The patterns were too old, too advanced, and too different from anything currently in use. Mi-jun knew someone who might be able to help her understand this better. She made a decision and began to prepare to travel to Kepler Station herself. Her bosses tried to stop her. They said it was too dangerous. They said the Armadas would destroy the station long before she could arrive. But Mi-jun was determined. She had discovered something important, and HFY needed to know about it. At Kepler Station, HFY was becoming more certain that something much bigger was happening. While Tayo worried about the approaching ships, HFY reviewed all of her data again and again. She looked at the timing. She looked at the pattern of the signal. She looked at the direction it had come from. Finally, she turned to Tayo and told him her theory. The signal had come from very far away, much farther than the local region of space. The signal was old, possibly very old, and the timing suggested that something in deep space had activated it or sent it outward. Whatever had done that was the real source of the signal. Not Kepler Station, not HFY, something else entirely. "We activated something," HFY told Tayo. "Our scanning was powerful enough to trigger a response from something that was sleeping or dormant in the far regions of space. The Galactic Council detected our signal, but they misunderstood what they were seeing." Tayo asked the obvious question. "So what did we activate? What is out there?" HFY shook her head slowly. "I do not know yet. But the Galactic Council fears it enough to send multiple armadas to investigate. That tells me it is something very dangerous. Something powerful enough to make 3 different civilizations forget their differences and work together for once." At that moment, a communication came through from the Galactic Council. The message was official and final. HFY was to be brought before the council for a trial. She had 72 hours to prove her innocence or face execution. The three armadas would arrive at Kepler Station within 36 hours. The message also said something that made HFY feel very small. It said that this situation was being broadcast across the entire galaxy in real time. Billions of beings were watching to see what would happen. Billions of beings believed she was guilty. Billions of beings wanted to see her judged and punished. HFY looked at the timer that now appeared on her screen. 72 hours. That was 3 days to solve a mystery that no one else could even understand, to prove her innocence to a galaxy that had already condemned her, and to do it all while 3 massive armadas moved through space toward her station. She took a deep breath and looked at her tired reflection in the dark screen. She still looked puffy. She still looked like a tired scientist who had been awake too long. And now, apparently, she looked like the most dangerous thing in the galaxy. "Teo," she said quietly, "I need you to help me. We need to understand what that signal really is before the armadas arrive. We need to prove what I am saying is true. And we need to do it in the next 36 hours. Teo nodded. He was frightened, but he believed in HFY. They began to work together, pulling apart every piece of data they had, searching for the truth in the numbers and patterns. And neither of them knew that in just a few hours, a young woman named Mi-jun would arrive at the station with her own discoveries, bringing new hope and new questions to the mystery that could end humanity's place in the galaxy forever. Mi-jun arrived at Kepler Station with only 8 hours left before the armadas reached the station's defensive perimeter. She came on a fast transport ship, pushing it to its maximum speed, carrying with her all of her research and analysis. When she arrived in the control room, HFY barely looked up from her work. Teo introduced them quickly, and then Mi-jun did something that surprised everyone. She pulled out her data and compared it directly with HFY's findings. Within minutes, the three of them understood something extraordinary. The energy signature that had frightened the entire galaxy was not new. It was ancient. The mathematical patterns that Mi-jun had studied contained information that was at least 10,000 years old. The technology that had created it was far more advanced than anything that currently existed in known space. "It is a beacon," Mi-jun said, her eyes bright with excitement and fear. "Not a weapon, a beacon, and it is very, very old." HFY and Mi-jun worked together, comparing notes and information, while Teo monitored the approaching armadas and updated them on timing. What they discovered was almost impossible to believe. The beacon had been created by a civilization that no longer existed, a civilization so advanced that they had created a network of hidden systems throughout the galaxy. Systems that were designed to do one thing, to warn the galaxy about a specific threat. The name of the civilization that created all of this was lost to time. Mi-jun and HFY called them the architects, because their creation was so vast and so carefully planned that it could only have been the work of great architects of the universe. The architects had created their warning network about 10,000 years ago. They had hidden these systems in remote places, in places where they would be safe from attack and damage. And they had set these systems to activate if a specific danger approached the galaxy. The danger they feared was something they called the void entity. What exactly was the void entity? The architects had left behind fragments of information about it, pieces that were scattered across their ancient stations and warning systems. From what Mi-jun and HFY could understand from the limited information available, the void entity was a being of enormous power. It was not alive in the way that normal creatures are alive, but it was conscious in some way. It did not attack or fight. Instead, it consumed. When the void entity moved through space, it fed on stars and planets and matter itself, leaving nothing behind but empty, collapsed space. The architects could not destroy it, HFY realized, reading through the ancient data files. They could not kill it, so they did something else instead. They created a way to trap it, to lock it away, to put it in a kind of sleep that would last forever. Mi-jun was reading the next section of information. The lock requires a specific frequency, a signal that only the architects could create, and that signal was hidden in their beacon network, waiting for someone to find it. Until my sensors found it, HFY said quietly. The three of them sat in silence for a moment, understanding the weight of what they had discovered. HFY's accident, her simple act of sending out a scanning signal into space, had triggered an ancient warning system that had been waiting for 10,000 years to be activated. But there was more. Mi-jun studied the data about why the beacon had been triggered now. The information was clear and terrifying. The void entity was not permanently locked away. It was only in a deep sleep, and the architects had set their beacon to activate when something changed in the universe that might wake the entity. That something was happening now. The gravitational patterns of the galaxy were shifting. It was a slow change, taking place over thousands of years, but it was real. These shifting patterns were disturbing the void entity's sleep. It was beginning to wake, and when it fully woke up, it would begin to move through space again, consuming everything in its path, just as it had done 10,000 years ago. The architects had created their beacon and their warning network as a final gift to whatever civilizations might exist when the entity woke up. It was their way of saying, "We could not destroy this danger, but here is the knowledge to trap it again. Here is the way to save yourselves." The three of them sent this information directly to the Galactic Council. They included all of the data, all of the analysis, all of the ancient information they had discovered, and they sent a clear statement. HFY was not a threat. There was no cosmic weapon. There was a cosmic alarm, and it was warning them about something far worse than any of them had imagined. The response from the Galactic Council came quickly, but it was not the response they had hoped for. Instead of relief or thanks, there was fear. The fear became a kind of panic. If the void entity was real, if it was waking up, if it would soon begin to move through space consuming everything, then every civilization in the galaxy was in danger. The Valorian Empire asked for immediate access to the architect technology. The Serpent Collective suggested trying to communicate with the void entity to negotiate with it. Smaller civilizations began emergency broadcasts to their home worlds, warning people to begin evacuating their planets. Governments prepared for war or surrender or exile. But something else happened too. The blame on HFY disappeared. She was no longer a threat. She was a messenger who had brought terrible news, but a messenger nonetheless. And suddenly, instead of being someone to fear, she became someone that the galaxy needed. The Valorian Empire recalled their warships. The Serpent Collective offered their largest ships to help. Even the Outer Ring nations sent their best scientists to work with HFY and her team. HFY understood something important in that moment. Humanity had no military advantage. Humans were not the strongest species in the galaxy. They did not have the oldest civilization or the most advanced technology. But humans had something else. Humans had solved the mystery. Humans had found the truth. And the galaxy was willing to listen to them because they had been honest and because they had the knowledge that everyone now needed. HFY turned to Mi-jun and Teo and said, "We are not the threat anymore, but we are the ones who can help solve this. That means we have responsibility now. That means we have to be the bridge between all of these civilizations and the truth of what is coming." Mi-jun smiled at her. Teo nodded seriously, and together the three of them began to prepare for the next phase of their mission. The galaxy was no longer afraid of HFY. It was afraid of the void entity. And humanity would help them understand it. But the clock was still ticking, the void entity was still waking up, and the architect's ancient beacon was still sending out its warning into the darkness of space. The message was clear. Something was coming. And everyone in the galaxy had only one choice. They could work together to stop it, or they could face it alone and be consumed. Kepler Station transformed from a quiet research outpost into the center of the galaxy's greatest effort. Ships arrived from every corner of known space. The Valorian Empire sent engineers and scientists. The Serpent Collective brought historians and philosophers. Species that had barely communicated for centuries now sat in the same rooms, working together toward a single goal. The United Nations of Earth decided that HFY was the natural leader of this project. She was the one who had first discovered the signal. She was the one who understood the architect systems. She was also someone who had no political power and no agenda other than survival. The Earth government sent her a message of support and gave her complete authority over the research and coordination of all species involved. HFY was surprised by this responsibility, but she accepted it. She understood that what was needed now was not a politician or a military leader. What was needed was a scientist who could see the problem clearly and could organize people from different civilizations to work together. The first thing HFY did was establish a central command center at Kepler Station. She brought in engineers from 7 different species to help upgrade the station's systems. A Valorian crystallographer named Keth worked on understanding the frequency patterns of the architect beacon. A Serpent Collective historian named Vesselon studied ancient records and databases, looking for anything else that might relate to the architects or the void entity. Keth was young for a Valorian, still learning about individual thought instead of just following the collective consciousness of his species. Working with HFY and Mi-Jun, he began to understand that individual ideas and individual decisions could be valuable. He questioned things that the Valorian collective would normally accept without thought. This made him difficult to work with sometimes, but it also made him very useful. Vesselon was old by Serpent standards, and he had spent his entire life studying dead civilizations. The idea that he might actually help prevent another civilization from dying was both exciting and frightening to him. He worked carefully through ancient databases, cross-referencing information and looking for patterns. He slept less than the other species and worked more, as if trying to make up for all the time he had wasted studying death instead of preventing it. Mi-Jun became the primary diplomat and translator. She moved between the different species groups, explaining what each one was doing and making sure everyone understood what was happening. Tayo continued to monitor the architect beacon system, making sure he understood every aspect of how it worked and how to activate it when the time came. They discovered that the architect defense network had many parts. There were 7 main beacon stations scattered across the galaxy. Each one was hidden in a dangerous location. One at the edge of a collapsing neutron star, one in a region of space twisted by exotic matter, one inside an enormous asteroid field, one at the heart of a black hole's outer edge, and others in places that were just as threatening. To activate the locking frequency and trap the void entity again, they would need to have teams at each beacon station. All the teams would need to act at exactly the same time, sending their signals in perfect coordination. If even one team failed, the entire operation would fail. The void entity would continue to wake and would soon begin to move through space, consuming everything in its path. HFY decided that she would lead one of the teams herself. She chose the team that would go to the neutron star because she understood that location and its dangers better than anyone else. She would be accompanied by Keth, the young Valorian engineer, and Vesselon, the old Serpent historian. The other teams were assigned to different species leaders. A human general named Sung Ho would lead the team to the asteroid field. A Valorian warrior named Kesh would explore the exotic matter region. Each team received equipment from multiple species, combining the best technology from all the different civilizations. There was one problem that everyone discussed, but no one could solve. The beacon stations had been built by the architects 10,000 years ago. They had defenses, automated systems that would protect them from damage or intrusion. No one knew if those defenses were still active after so many thousands of years, or if they might be triggered when the human teams tried to reach the beacon stations. HFY addressed the entire council of leaders one day. She stood in front of representatives from 15 different species, each one watching her carefully, waiting to hear what she would say. "We do not have time to study everything carefully," she told them. "The void entity is waking up. We can feel it in the gravitational data, in the energy readings, in everything we measure from space. We have to move forward, even though we do not know all the answers. We have to take risks, because the alternative is to do nothing and let the void entity consume everything." Keth made a humming sound that meant agreement in Valorian. Vesselon moved his long body in a pattern that suggested acceptance. The other leaders nodded or made their own species gestures of agreement. "We also need to remember something important," HFY continued. "We are not enemies. We were not enemies before this danger came, even when we pretended to be. And we are not enemies now. We are a galaxy coming together to save itself. That is something new. That is something good. Whatever happens when we go to those beacon stations, we go as allies, not as separate civilizations." The council passed a resolution that day. It declared that all the civilizations represented were now part of a unified alliance. They had a single purpose: to awaken the architect beacon systems and use them to lock away the void entity once again. After that was accomplished, they would negotiate treaties that would keep the alliance strong. In the weeks that followed, the teams trained and prepared. HFY led her team through simulations and planning sessions. She reviewed everything they knew about the neutron star region. She studied the architect data about the beacon station there. She learned to work with Keth and Vesselon, understanding their strengths and weaknesses. Keth was brilliant with technology, but sometimes needed to be reminded to consider the human element of decisions. Vesselon understood history and patterns, but could become lost in endless discussions about the past. HFY realized that together, the three of them represented something important: a Valorian learning to value individual thought, a serpent choosing to prevent death instead of study it, and a human willing to lead beings from across the galaxy toward a common goal. The day came when they were ready. Supply ships left from Kepler Station, heading toward different parts of the galaxy. Each team carried equipment, weapons for defense, and the hope of their entire civilization. The void entity continued to stir in the distant space where it had slept for 10,000 years, and HFY, Keth, and Vesselon prepared to leave on their dangerous journey toward the neutron star and whatever waited for them there. The journey to the neutron star took 3 weeks of hard travel through space. HFY, Keth, and Vesselon worked together on the ship, each one contributing their skills and knowledge. Keth studied the architect technology continuously, preparing himself for what they would find. Vesselon recorded everything in detailed notes, his natural scholar's mind wanting to document this historic mission. HFY planned, strategized, and made sure the team stayed focused on their goal. During these 3 weeks, something changed between them. They stopped being representatives of their different species and became a real team. When Keth nearly made a mistake with some equipment, HFY caught it and fixed it, and Keth learned something new. When Vesselon became too worried about the dangers ahead, both HFY and Keth reassured him, and he found the strength to continue. When HFY was exhausted and wanted to give up, the other two encouraged her, reminding her why they were doing this. One night, when they were close to their destination, Keth asked HFY why she was leading this team when she could have stayed safe at Kepler Station. HFY thought about the question for a long time before answering. Because someone needs to be here who can make decisions based on science and truth, not on what each species believes is best for themselves, she said. And because I am the one who accidentally started all of this, I have a responsibility to help finish it. Vesselon made a soft sound, like agreement. I spent my whole life studying dead things, he said. Dead civilizations, dead species, dead stars. Now I am working to keep things alive. It feels better than studying death. When they finally reached the neutron star, the beauty and danger of it took their breath away. The star was incredibly dense, so small and so heavy that its gravity pulled at their ship constantly. The radiation from it was intense, requiring all their shields to stay active. And around the star, hidden in the chaos of radiation and gravitational waves, was the Architect Beacon Station. The station appeared on their sensors as a structure that should not have survived intact for 10,000 years. But the architects had built well. The station was made of materials that humans did not even have names for. It was designed to withstand the extreme conditions around the neutron star. As they approached, they could see that it was still active. Lights flickered inside. Systems were still running. Then, without warning, the station's defenses activated. Laser beams shot out, trying to hit their ship. Energy waves pushed against their shields. The station had recognized them as unknown entities and was trying to destroy them, just as it had been programmed to do 10,000 years ago. Keth worked frantically at the controls, trying to communicate with the station's computer. He sent signals in every language he could think of, trying to tell the station that they were not enemies, that they were here to awaken the beacon system. Finally, after several long minutes, the attack stopped. The station's computer had recognized certain patterns in their ship's technology that matched the Architect database. It understood that they were allowed to approach. They landed inside a huge chamber, and HFY and Keth went out in protective suits to explore the station. Vesselon stayed with the ship, ready to launch a rescue if something went wrong. What they found inside the station was incredible. The architects had left behind not just technology, but information. Thousands of years of knowledge was stored in data formats that the architects had designed to last forever. HFY and Keth worked carefully through the station, gathering data and understanding how the beacon system worked. What they discovered was both wonderful and terrible. The beacon system was designed to create a specific frequency that would communicate with the void entity, telling it to sleep, commanding it to stay dormant. But creating that frequency was complicated. It required precise calculations and perfect timing. More importantly, they discovered that the beacon stations were not weapons. They could not hurt the void entity. They could not kill it or trap it in the way most beings understood those words. Instead, the frequency would put the entity into a state of dimensional suspension. It would exist outside of normal space and time, unable to feed, unable to move, unable to do anything but sleep. How long would it sleep? HFY asked, reading the Architect data carefully. Forever, Keth answered. Or until the universe ends. The architects did not know how to kill it. They only knew how to put it to sleep permanently. After gathering all the information from the neutron star beacon, they prepared to leave. But as they were walking back to their ship, the station trembled. The trembling became stronger. Keth realized what was happening. The neutron star's gravity was increasing. The star was pulling in matter from the space around it, becoming even heavier, even more dense. Their ship would be crushed if they did not leave immediately. They ran. HFY and Keth sprinted back to the ship, their protective suits' thrusters helping them move faster. The station collapsed behind them, ancient technology finally failing under stress it could not withstand. They launched just as the gravity became too strong, pushing the ship away from the neutron star with all the power they could generate. As they moved away, Vesselon looked back at the beacon station, now being pulled into the neutron star. We got what we needed, he said quietly. The architect's work is complete. Meanwhile, the other teams were having their own adventures and discoveries. At the exotic matter region, the Valorian team discovered that time moved differently there. They lost an entire day that lasted only an hour outside the region. But they successfully gathered data from that beacon station. The asteroid field team, led by General Sung Ho, faced thousands of small rocks moving at high speed, but they managed to navigate through and reach their station safely. Each team sent their data back to Kepler Station, where Mi-jun and Tayo analyzed everything. Slowly, a complete picture emerged. The 7 beacon stations, when activated together, would create a unified frequency that was strong enough to reach the void entity even at the edge of the galaxy. The frequency was designed to activate only once, at a specific time, when all the beacon stations sent their signals simultaneously. The calculations were difficult. The timing was critical. A few seconds off would mean the frequency would be wrong and the entity would not respond. But more than that, there was another challenge that the architects had hidden in their data. The frequency was unstable. Once activated, it would only last for 6 hours. After 6 hours, it would start to fail. If the lock was not completed within those 6 hours, the frequency would disperse into space and become useless. The void entity would continue to wake and would begin to move. Haewon, Keth, and Vesalon returned to Kepler Station after many weeks of travel. They had worked together on a hostile world, had nearly died together in the gravity of a neutron star, had learned to trust each other completely. When they arrived, they were not just representatives of their different species anymore. They were friends. They had done something together that none of their individual civilizations could have done alone. Haewon looked at the data from all the teams, at the information gathered from all 7 beacon stations. She understood what they had to do. In 1 week, they would make their attempt. All 7 beacon stations would be activated. All the signals would be sent at exactly the same moment, and they would either succeed in trapping the void entity, or they would fail and the galaxy would face its greatest danger.